Chatting with us now is Serah Blain, and Serah is a much prettier pronunciation than Serah, and I was gently chastised for that. Serah, it's a beautiful name. With the Secular Coalition for Arizona, give us a thumbnail sketch overview of the coalition.
So we're a political advocacy group. We work to ensure that our government remains secular and that the rights of all Arizonans aren't dependent on the religious beliefs of people in positions of power. And we represent 15 non-theistic organizations throughout the state, and it's a wide demographic of families and older people and educated people and blue-collar people. We have a really wonderful diversity of non-theists in our state.
And Thomas Jefferson was a great advocate of separation
He was,
of church
absolutely.
and state. Yeah. The founding fathers, they knew what they were doing when they wrote the Constitution.
I like to think so.
So what is your organization's position with regard to what the Constitution says and what's happening in government?
Well, so first of all, I lobby at the state level, so I can speak a little bit to that, but I'm really much more familiar with what the Arizona State Constitution says about church-state separation. Mm-hmm. But absolutely, I think that our federal Constitution ensures that that the government can't regulate churches in a way that prohibits free expression, and that churches aren't able to create laws based on narrow religious beliefs that would infringe on the rights of all Americans.
Why do we keep belaboring this point? It's just, I'm curious about this. Because the Constitution clearly states separation of church and state.
Does.
Our founding fathers, whether it's a state or whether we're talking nationally, they knew what they were implying there, what they meant, what it rules. They came from a state-dominated religious, obviously, situation in England, in Europe. So now, why do we keep tweaking this? It means separation of church and state, as I understand it from the Constitution, means that no government-run religion.
Right.
Or mandated religion.
Right.
Okay, we have that in the United States. People have the right to worship whatever religion they choose.
Sure. Well, and unfortunately, we have religious groups that attempt to lobby government to enact public policy based on their specific religious traditions.
Certainly.
And so, and particularly right now with the gay and lesbian rights movement, we see that where there's an attempt to maintain theological definitions of marriage rather than having it be a civil policy. So examples like that, and reproductive health care is another hot topic where churches really want to have their particular perspective, the law of the land, and we really, in order to ensure religious freedom for all Americans and Arizonans, we need to keep those separate. We need to have the laws based on facts and evidence and what advances human well-being rather than a particular religious position.
What's the current statute in Arizona regarding medical help for people who want to use birth control methods for private industry to provide it or not provide it? Is that choice still available to businesses in Arizona?
Well, so I think you may be referring to the contraception law that allows religious employers to fail to provide contraception coverage to their employees. And our Secular Coalition's biggest problem with that is that it privileges religious employers to deny contraception, whereas other employers don't have similar choices. So it's privileging religious conviction over other kinds of conviction, and it's to the detriment of
that's the issue. That's the issue that I find very hard to understand. It should not even be a government issue, period. Obviously, this is what's happening. The borders are being blurred. If you want to practice contraception, you should be allowed to do that. That shouldn't be whether your employer sanctions it, whether it's government mandated. That is a personal decision. Why don't we keep those borders apart?
I would love for us to keep those borders apart, and that's what my organization works very hard to do, to ensure that religion isn't intruding into your right to make decisions about your own life.
It isn't the government's business or your employer's business.
Correct.
What you do in that area.
Right. Yeah, and you know, this law, there are a lot of people who take issue with it simply because they don't think that government should be mandating what any employer provides in terms of health care.
Well, there comes the health care issue. Yes.
Sure, and so what happens with this is that the government is privileging religious employers to opt out of certain kinds of care, whereas secular employers can't make that same choice. So it's an example of religious privilege and policy.
And then again, but it still shouldn't be, contraception is very inexpensive. It shouldn't be any care given from any policy, any insurance, any employer, anything.
I don't think it's economic. I think it's more ideological.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you know, it's inexpensive unless you're really poor and all you know, you're working at minimum wage in the state of Arizona.
There's many agencies you can go.
Well, and unfortunately, in our state, the religious right has worked really hard to defund some of those clinics, so they're not able to provide some of that contraceptive care that they were once able to.
There is the circle that's happening, obviously, that's happening.
It's very damaging.
What can we do as citizens? What do you encourage people to do?
Well, I love for people to get involved in citizen lobbying and to know your representatives and to have a relationship with them when you see policies coming up that you're concerned about. Get on the phone, send an email, get involved with organizations like ours, Secular Coalition for Arizona. And ACLU also works on church-state separation issues, Americans United for the Separation of Church and State. We have a lot of great organizations in our state that are attempting to ensure there's a wall of protection between church and state.
The atheist component in this, how does this play? Same situation?
So my organization represents non-theists, so our organizations are atheistic.
So you don't discriminate, though?
Well, in terms of government, no. I mean, that's our position, is that government should neither favor nor disfavor religion or non-religion. That it needs to be equal.
Are you finding support among some religious leaders for the freedom issue?
Absolutely, yeah. We've been working with progressive people of faith, particularly on the reproductive health care issues. It seems to be a pretty narrow minority in this state of people who want to advocate that particular perspective. And I think it's, you know, the Center for Arizona Policy is a very powerful lobby group in our state. They're an evangelical Christian organization. And evangelical Christians in our state are only about 20% of the population. So we have 20% of the population enacting religious laws for the other 80% of us. And it's simply unfair.
Thank you, sweetheart, for being here.
Thank you.
The website, as I'm reading it, secularaz.org.
That's correct.
Is that where they can find out more about
Absolutely.
you? Excellent. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
When we come back, it's Juneteenth time. Milt Cannon here with the Prescott Jazz Society.